Listen, there's a lot to get into with you, man. I am so excited to get into this because, I mean, Bruce, I had no earthly idea, even speaking to you the day before you ended up going out for your second season, how things would have gone or how things would have been portrayed or how you would have acted. So I'm pumped to get into all of this. Listen, they take away my press credentials if I didn't start, of course, with this question. How close were you to actually playing the idol? Did you go in thinking no matter what, I'm not playing it? Was there something you picked up on? What led to that decision that has you talking with me today?
As much as I love you, man, I didn't want to be talking to you today. Drew, with his comments that he said, he got my mind spinning a little bit, and I was very close to taking off my left shoe because that's where I had the idol hidden. I was very close to taking off my left shoe and just taking out that idol and playing it on myself. But, when you have some very convincing people that can tell very good lies right to your face, it changes your thought process a little bit. And, to the credit of the people that are there, back when we voted off Sifu, I was gonna play my idol then, and I was convinced not to with the great conversations that I had, and they kind of echoed the very same thing, this time. So they got me.
Yeah. So when you talk about those really good conversations, obviously we saw it happen with Emily in particular, and we'll certainly get into that dynamic. Was that the case with anyone else, though, as well, that made you so sure this takedown Reba plan was going to happen?
It was Emily was definitely the driving force because it wasn't shown on camera a lot. But Emily and I would talk a couple of times every day. And when I heard something, I would tell her. When she heard something, she would tell me. Now, how much of that was the truth, we don't know. But when I go back and I kind of think about it, it was more along the matter of fact that this is going on and this one's saying this and this one's saying that. So I didn't feel at any point in time that I was being lied to from Emily because of her station at the beginning of the game, because of her station over at Lulu, and in knowing that the Reba had their four. Like I knew that they had their four going on, and it was even well broadcasted in this episode that the Reba four are going nuts. And I figured out a way to be able to get these Reba four to do their, to take someone down. But she was good. She was very good.
Yeah, so let's talk more about this because as you talked about in this episode, who would have thought that the person who called out you on the mat on day one, challenging your assertion that I don't have an advantage over you, would be the one that you were not only close with, but would also do you in the end? What was it like for you to make this reconnection, I suppose, with someone that caused you so much trouble in the beginning of the game and forming the relationship that led to this outcome?
And I say this on a regular basis because people in my own inner circle are like, "Oh my God, Emily, she drives me crazy." Like, no, Emily shouldn't drive you crazy. What Emily did was she actually spoke, and she used her thought process in regards to what she thought it was me having an advantage. It was never anything saying, "Oh, Bruce is a POS, Bruce is this, like I can't stand that he's here," blah blah blah. It was none of that. It was just her thought process and me having an advantage of the game. So it was so much easier for me to not. I didn't feel anything towards her at that moment. Like she called me out, like I made the faces. You got to make the faces. You're on television, but I'm making the faces. But I'm hearing my castmates that are like, "Oh no, don't say that. I'm gonna get you." Like, and we go back to camp, and I can't believe she said what she said. And like, I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, yeah, and I'll play along with it. But in my mind, nothing at all that she said was something that was going to make it difficult for me to be able to have a relationship with her. So when I saw her and she was apologetic, I'm like, no, don't worry about it. And I really meant that. Don't worry about it. I am not mad at all. Like I'm good.
So let's say that you do reach into that left shoe, you do play the idol. Now, in this case, your plan isn't working. Jake ends up going, but you're still there. What
Yeah.
was your plan moving forward? Were there people that you were looking to get to the end with, or was it just from that perspective, you gotta win out or else you're gone?
To be painfully honest, I knew that I was screwed. It was either going to be this tribal or next tribal that I was going home. Whether, if I didn't play it, I go home. If I play it, I go home the next one. Unless I tried to get back on the immunity winning train and I was able to win myself at least to the final, the final four and get placed in the fire making. Um, that was my plan because in had I played my idol and gone back to camp, I would have already known. I would have already known who placed their votes on. Um, just from the standpoint of the voting, how it's been going up to this point in time. You have the Reba 4 that vote together, but who defected from the Reba 4? Well, I mentioned Julie's name and voting Julie out because that was brought to me from Emily. So now I vote Julie. So now I know Julie's going to turn out and vote me. Like I had, like that was my complete thought process with that. So I would have had to have gone back. There really wouldn't have been anybody other than Jake that I could have maybe kind of tied my horse back to somehow, some way. But I don't really see any way of working with anyone aside from the fact that if they needed a number to get somebody else out and everyone immunity, that's really the only way that anyone else would work with me at this point in time.
Let's talk about some of these relationships. I want to start with Julie, actually, because this sort of came out of nowhere for us, but I could see from a certain perspective, you two were the ones that were dominating those challenges. You were the quote mom and dad or crazy uncle of the tribe. Where did this relationship come from, even though it did lead to your point, trying to vote her out last time?
Yeah, our relationship started when the merge happened. Julie and I got together literally. Like I saw her, she saw me, big hug, and it was right before I had said we got to get the shelters, put together. Julie and I were talking, and she's like, "My God, like, are you having the same problem I'm having?" And I'm like, "What's that, Julie?" She's like, "They don't want to do anything." Right? I'm like, I want shelter. I want to be comfortable. I want this fire to keep going. Like, she's like, I know. It's like, it's so hard to get them to do stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not the only one going through it. And that's the difference in our generation. Like, we just go and do things because we're not expected to have a conversation about it, whatever have you. Not speaking ill of anyone, but that's the differences between the two of us. And then when it came to Julie, it was funny because Emily came to me and she said, Julie wants to vote you out. She's not with you. And I was like, oh. And hindsight being 2020, she's the Reba 4. So, the writing was on the wall. Emily never lied to me. So she just told me that Julie was coming after me. And that was just my cue to call.
Look, we got to talk about Katurah here. Definitely the most staunch, consistent anti-Bruce voice that we've seen in confessionals this season. And it certainly seems like you had at least some insight to the fact that you two were a bit like oil and water. But I would love to hear your own perspective, considering that you played the entire game together. What was your insight into your relationship?
Um, you know, my insight with Katurah, the way that I was looking at the game was, it wasn't as strong-willed as Katurah's was. Katurah really was annoyed by me, and she did a very good job in not showing me. And the olive branch between she and I were handed out throughout the entire season, just trying and trying, it just never took hold. Um, but there's so much more to Katurah's game than just complaining about Bruce. And there's so much more to my game as to everybody dogpiling on Bruce, that he's annoying, this, that, and the other. You know, our relationship on the show just didn't click. There was something there, and she and I have spoken many times about the show, and we're on okay terms at this point in time. But it's just we didn't click. There's just something that was missing that was there, and that's going to be on us to be able to work together to figure out, because she's not for nothing. She is a great person. She's done a lot of great things in her life. So I wish people would see and recognize that more than anything else, aside from Bruce. She hates Bruce.
Absolutely. Well, let's stick in New York and talk about your number one. I want to talk about Kelly here. I mean, I'm incredibly curious from a couple perspectives. A, what made you believe that she was your number one? And B, talk me through the process that we saw you deal with last episode of trying to think through, okay, my number one ally went home, but also they might have tried to get rid of me as well.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this game is that you have somewhat of an idea, but those ideas can get tarnished at any point in time. Just so my idea was tarnished at almost day one. And Kelly is a very strong person. Like I gravitate towards strong people. The things that how they people carry themselves and their thought process when they go through things. Like Kelly is that. She mentioned she's a nurse. Like wow, all right. Like you are extremely smart as well. Not to say that even if she was anybody else, it wouldn't matter. She's a strong, smart person. So it was easy for me to be able to look at her and say, okay, like if I'm going to have someone that I'm going to align with, it's going to be Kelly. And then there was also Jake and also Brando. Like I can see this thing happening because I'm the old guy, they're young and smart, extremely smart. Putting those things together. So I need that around me. But then fast forward to the day Kelly gets voted out and we go back to camp and we're there and I'm being told that, I was looked at as an anchor dragging her game down. That was very, I don't even want to say humbling because I didn't feel that I did anything wrong at that moment in time. It was something that was just so innate with me because I never at any point in time want to feel as if I'm a burden on anyone.
Hmm.
And when you hear that you're a burden to someone's game and I'm potentially the reason why someone feels that they were voted out, like that doesn't sit well. I don't think it sit well with anybody. And I remember going into the confessional and they're like, Bruce, we want to ask you questions about blah blah blah. And I said, no, I don't want to talk about that shit. Like I want to talk about what I was just told. And I just went into it. And I was emotional. I was really emotional. Like if you go back and look and see when they actually show me talking about the thing with Kelly, my eyes are red because I just finished turning my head from like, tearing up and because I again thought about my daughter and thought about my wife and everything like that. Like that conversation just hurt in a human aspect. It brought me back to a human aspect because I was just playing this game as a game. Like I never put like my personal human feelings and never really took into account anyone's personal human feelings with, hell, if I ever play again, I'm gonna do that because that was one of my downfalls. But I didn't do that. But then to hear that someone else is now emotionally distraught because of my actions, I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait. And then there's the cycle, and that's what we saw.
So that's almost a microcosm of talking about your story and your edit in general, because it was unique. We got a lot of that. Okay, Bruce is annoying. Bruce is domineering. Bruce is overbearing. I mean, this was sort of, I think, a taste for you as to like how people were perceiving you in the game from two fronts. Did you realize it was to that extreme in the moment? And how do you look at the way you were portrayed on the show as a result?
In the moment, you don't see it. You don't see it. It's like anything else. If I sit there and if I'm at work and I'm seeing someone, getting reprimanded for something, and then all of a sudden they leave that reprimanding session and then they go over, they talk to their buddy, and they're going to talk to their buddy about it, and their buddy's going to say, "Well, you gonna quit? I'm gonna quit too. When you put your paperwork in, I'm gonna ride right after you." Like it's you get that collective group of people that are going to be able to ride or die with you until the time comes. Well, now that person that got reprimanded gets fired, and then the other person is like, "Oh, hey, work is great. I'm going to go back and do what I'm supposed to do." Like that's kind of what I saw. What was probably going on that I did not see, all that stuff that was going on behind the scenes. But then to find out that everybody's looking at me that way, that was, I chalked it up to a couple of different things. But one of the things that sticks with me the most is that my generation growing up, and I always say this, oh my God, generation. Listen, the next closest person to me was 12 years younger than me. And then from there, it went to 16 years younger, and so on and so forth. So technically, I could be their father. If you take any of these people and if you rewind the clock 5 years, and if any of their parents say to them, "Yo, I'm gonna need to take the garbage out," they're gonna be like, "Oh God." So no matter what I said, no matter what, it was like, "Oh, geez, Dad's talking again." Okay, okay, because we always say yes to our parents' face, and then we turn around like, and then we don't want to really deal with it anymore. We've been outside of talking to mom and dad. So that depiction that I got was just basically that was human nature. Everybody takes their own human nature into this game, and that's what happened.
And I know you mentioned with the Kelly stuff that you would try to bring it as some sort of lesson back into your real life. Was that the case? Because, we just talked before getting on. It's been a heck of a couple of years for you between 44 and 45. I would imagine this was like yet another notch of life lessons that you brought back to Rhode Island.
Yeah. Don't you mean from 41 to 45? Because
Yeah.
it was 2019 is when I started this process. It's been a beautiful process. Yeah, that conversation with Kelly, and I did say it on television that I'm going to ask my family and my daughter in regards to how I am and how I am towards them. And I didn't have that conversation, but what I did do is I did take a step back. I took a little bit of a step back, and I listened a whole lot more than I actually spoke. And the proof is in the pudding when you go through a situation like this. My daughter is in college, and she calls me every day. And my son, he's here. He's a senior in high school, and we have more conversations now. I think because I'm more open with him to be able to say, okay, what talk to me, let me know what's going on, and I'm listening before I want to start, trying to say something and fix the world's problems with my dad knowledge or my uncle knowledge, whatever you want to call it. So it all kind of worked its way out, and the relationships are stronger here.
I'm so happy we got Bruce 2.0 on this show. You brought so much to this season. And obviously, to your point, wish we were talking in a month instead of right now, especially under such, big circumstances. But for what it's worth, every conversation we've had in the past year has been so fantastic. I've really enjoyed getting to watch you. Can't wait to watch Bruce the Juror as well. I'm sure Ponderosa was an interesting situation given the makeup of it.
Oh, Ponderosa, the bane of my existence. But hey, it's all good. It's all good.
Well, thank you as always, man, for taking the time to talk with me. Again, such a great time getting to watch you and now talk with you today. And I wish you and your family nothing but the best, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, have a good one. Take care, Bruce.
You too. Bye.
Bye.